Welcome back to another episode of the Tracy Take. We got an interesting episode for you guys today about the Carolina Panthers. But first, I just want to say, if you have not already, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button. We'd really appreciate it. And if you like what we're saying, go ahead and put a comment down below and give us a thumbs up. And if you don't like what we're saying, put a comment down below too. So let's just go ahead and get into it now. With the Carolina Panthers, they're an interesting team for me this year. I really like a lot of what they did this offseason. I know I got a lot of hate for some of my draft comments about J.C. Horn and kind
Mm-hmm.
of and that he primarily does man coverage and he was not very successful in zone. But they did bring in AJ Bouye and a few other pieces to help kind of transition from zone to man. Still,
Mm-hmm.
maybe a few growing pains in there, but I think the defense is coming along. What about you? What do you think so far?
I mean, I would say that they, amongst the NFC South, they had the most active of the off seasons, and
Hmm.
particularly on the defensive end, they did end up losing Stephen Weatherly and
Yeah,
Fa Abada. Fa Abada. I think I pronounced that correctly. But however, they made up with those losses by getting Hassan Reddick and bringing him
yeah,
over. He's bringing over 12.5 sacks to go alongside Brian Burns, the other defensive end, 9 sacks as well. So it's going to be a
yeah,
pretty formidable defensive line with Derek Brown and Bravion Roy, the defensive tackles as
yeah.
well.
And another
And
guy that I just want to throw in there before you continue is
go ahead.
Yetur Gross-Matos. He's a second-year guy out of Penn State. He
Uh,
he looked pretty good in his rookie year, and look for him to continue to develop as well.
Yeah,
Sorry,
so
continue.
no, and that's I didn't even know that, and so they have the depth to go along with it. They can rotate these guys out
Hmm.
because already last year they were 18th in overall defense last year in 2020. So
Yeah,
middle of the road, and with the improvements I think that they made on the other side of the ball, if they just be middle of the road as well. At worst, I think it's worst case scenario is they'll be middle of the road just with all these additions. So
yeah,
the one question on the linebacking side is just who's going to be playing. Actually, I take that back. No, it seems like actually majority of the linebacking core and the rest of the secondary is kind of set in stone. You have Jeremy Chin, who was their strong safety last year. I think it just might kind of depend on, I guess, which of the cornerbacks are going to be CB1. Is J.C. Horn going to get the nod at CB2, or is there going to be someone else like Troy Pride Jr., who had a pretty
yeah.
successful year last year, get the starting job nod?
I think the linebacking core is actually kind of a little bit of a question. It's led by Shaq Thompson, who's a little bit older, and then Denzel Perriman, who's been effective when he's playing, but he's had some nagging injuries. So
Mm-hmm.
uh, the linebacking core, I guess, is in question. However, it's probably the least important aspect to the defense that they want to play. I will say Jeremy Chin did not rate that well in man coverage last year, so I still feel like there will be some growing pains early on in the season for man
Mm-hmm.
coverage because the Carolina Panthers as a whole were not that good in man coverage last year. But bringing on J.C. Horn, AJ Bouye, that's definitely the direction that they want to go.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Uh, so I think the linebacking core can kind of be covered up by an effective pass rush, and as that secondary kind of continues to grow and improve, I think that linebacking core will be covered up uh, pretty effectively.
Mm-hmm.
For me, uh, let's move over to the offensive side of the ball. But for me, the offensive line is the clear weakness of this
Yeah.
team. Seems to be a trend so far in this division. But they really only have, I think, two guys that are pretty set in stone. Uh, Taylor Moton and Matt Paradis are kind of their left tackle and center, or their two guys that I think are really going to
Yeah.
stick to their positions. But
Mm-hmm.
other than that, they still have left guard, and right tackle that are going to be up for grabs. But they have a lot of guys that are going to come in and compete for those positions, like Cam Irving,
Mm-hmm.
Brady Christensen, Greg Little, John Mill, and Pat Elfline are all going to be competing for one of the three of those spots.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
That's a interesting competition, and I said it earlier in the Falcons episode that competition breeds success, and I think that will be the same case for the Carolina Panthers. So
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's going to be interesting as well because if you look at the skill position guys, um, arguably for Sam Darnold, their biggest acquisition this last year, skill position wise, best uh, um, uh, pieces around
group,
him. Yeah, yeah, or
yeah,
a group of guys.
that's not even arguable.
No, yeah, yeah, no, not even close. But
Yeah,
Christian McCaffrey in the backfield, I'm going to be excited to see him. Well, not as a Falcons fan, but just as a football fan, excited to see him back there. He's always exciting to watch. And I didn't
hmm
realize this that the Panthers had two 1,000-yard receivers last year. I
yep,
didn't, it flew very under the radar. And adding
yeah,
Terrace Marshall Jr. in the second round, I think, is only going to increase that receiving core as well. But as we were just talking about with the offensive line, going to be a lot of question marks, and hopefully they can figure that out, or at least give Sam Darnold time to hit these guys, and
hmm
worst case scenario can scheme them open because you don't want Christian McCaffrey getting hurt. You want Sam Darnold to be successful and
yeah,
allow time in the pocket so he can make his reads. And I guess one of the benefits is being one of the worst offensive lines in the league is it can only go up from here. So
yeah,
a lot of guys showed improvement from last year. You mentioned Cameron Irving; he was with Dallas last year. 2020
hmm
was his best season
yeah,
by overall grade. So hopefully he can keep that trend going and
yeah,
potentially be in the left tackle or left guard spot. So
yeah,
it's going to be. I, as a Falcons fan, I hate saying this, but I would honestly put the Panthers potentially higher up on the potential playoff hunt
yeah,
ranking than the Falcons. I think they're defensively they're much more sound, and offensively, I would say they're about the same. They have a lot of weapons. And actually, I take that back. I think the Panthers' offensive weapons are probably greater because they have a good established running back who
yeah.
can both run and catch out of
And
the backfield.
and instead of just like Calvin Ridley being a 1,000-yard receiver, they also have DJ Moore, Robbie Anderson, adding Terrace Marshall Jr. And then they also have a few tight ends here and there. I know Ian Thomas is the one that's kind of
Hmm.
there right now, but they have a few guys that are looking to take over. Like I think Tommy Trimble is the guy that they just drafted.
Yep, Tommy
Uh,
Tremble was. Hmm.
yeah, and so like those guys will play a role. Sam Darnold historically has not loved the tight ends, but he also has really only had Chris Herndon, who's injury prone to throw to New York. So we'll just kind of have to see. I would
Hmm.
like to get into their schedule here really quick before we give our final thoughts.
Absolutely.
Um,
Hmm.
so I have them going 10-7. I have them being the sixth seed in the wild card race in the NFC. But they have in my opinion, probably the easiest start to a schedule as about any team in the NFL. So they get the New York Jets in Carolina, and then the Saints in Carolina in weeks 1 and 2, and then for road games of all places, they go to Houston and to Dallas. Who I do not expect Houston to be remotely close to a good team. And I think Dallas is historically underperforming what their talent level shows. And then
Yeah.
they come back to Carolina to have two home games in a row and play Philadelphia and Minnesota, where I think that they will win both of those. And then they play the New York Giants, and I do think that they will win that game. That game's a little bit more of a toss up. So is the Minnesota game.
Hmm.
Uh, but then they have their, I guess, midseason stretch. They go to Atlanta, they play New England, and then they go to Arizona, which is always tough. And then in week 12, they go to Miami. So definitely a few tough games there. And then they do have to end the season playing Tampa Bay twice in 2 weeks. But I think that they're going to take advantage of a pretty weak, uh, I say pretty weak as an understatement, beginning of the schedule.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I'm
yeah.
looking at the opening of that schedule, and if they're 4-3 after those first 7 games, that's a disappointment.
Yeah.
Just with how tough those final 5 games are after their bye week, because you
Yeah.
also they're playing the Bills as well, uh,
Yeah.
and I even see that you have them going 1-6 against teams with a winning record, and that's where they really need to capitalize on these teams that are going to be weaker. And starting out 7 and
Yeah.
0 will absolutely help out their playoff chances for
Yeah.
sure. Um, but yeah, I mean that's one of the benefits of kind of where they finished last year. Within the division, having a very a much easier schedule than a team like the Saints who won the
Yeah.
division. But the
Mhm.
start of this schedule, yeah, like the Jets, that will be an interesting one to watch just because of Sam Darnold's kind of, I guess, homecoming, even though it'll be in Carolina. But Saints, I can see them winning. As you said, the only one I think that'll be tough is we'll just have to see how Dallas does. We already did our season
Yeah.
preview on Dallas, and Dallas on paper should be the best team in the NFC East. I could see them giving some fits because I feel like
Yeah.
Dallas is always pretty tough to play at home, but
Mhm.
Dallas also normally finds a way to lose it in the end. But
Yeah.
says a Falcons fan. But really, I think to kind of wrap things up, yeah, the Panthers
Yeah.
are looking really good. It looks like they're making the right strides. And even if they don't make the playoffs, though, I think they have a clear picture on what they need to do next year, and that's to bolster up that
Yeah.
offensive line. Just to help
Mhm.
protect Sam Darnold, because I believe they have all these guys for the next couple of years. All the
Yeah.
key skill position players on that offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, no, and I think that they've done a really good job of balancing veteran experience with young talent, and I think that's part of the reason why uh, I feel like they're going to have success this year and into the future. Because if you look at this team, if Sam Darnold can come in and become the franchise quarterback that he was drafted to be, this team, if they can piece together an offensive line, is very young, and I think this team in the Atlanta Falcons, after Tom Brady retires, will be duking it out at the top of this division for years to come.
Yeah, and that's I was going to say this with the Falcons video, but now we have a couple extra seconds, and this will be kind of my final note, really, with the
Hmm.
Panthers. But the NFC South has always been like that. It's been very cyclical. You know, the
Hmm.
when the Falcons were winning the division and were doing really well at the top, that's when the Saints and Drew Brees were not doing very well. But then notice in the past couple of years, the Saints have been winning the division. Now it's the Buccaneers' turn. Uh,
Hmm.
it's always been very cyclical like that. You know, the NFC South, I think, has always been very competitive, and
Hmm.
I think the Panthers are making the right strides to compete for the division title. Um, they won't be this year just because we're going to talk about the Bucks here in a second in a separate video. But I think the Panthers got an outside shot. I think to make the playoffs. So, but
Yeah.
I think just kind of wrap things up. Thanks again for watching. Hit that subscribe button if you have not already, and hit that thumbs up notification bell as well. And looking forward to seeing you next time. And good luck, Panther fans.